Alright, so guys, I promised you that we're going to get shorter on these chapters, and I'm finally going to make good on that promise. I believe this chapter is super short. So, without further ado, let's get on with chapter 10. Chapter 10 is motivation and emotion, and it's not really that deep. There's really not that much substance, I don't think, to this chapter. It's an important topic, but there's just not a lot of meat in this chapter, especially in an intro class. So let's fly through this one. All right, and I will say this: this is one of those unfortunate situations where this is the best class discussion of the entire semester. Everybody walks out holding their side because we're laughing so hard, wiping tears out of their eyes. I mean, it's a hilarious conversation. It's also a very philosophical and insightful conversation, but it's that's going to be lost in this online one-way asynchronous format. So I apologize for that. But anyway, that's a little bit towards the end. So I'll kind of play both sides of the conversation for you when we get there. All right, so talking about motivation. Motivation is all of the processes that initiate, direct, and sustain behavior. So what does that mean? Well, we know what motivation is, right? Um, we don't need to over academic this definition, right? Two components are activation or persistent. Wait, two components are activation, persistence, and intensity. That's three things. I don't even know what I was talking about there. Um, See what I'm saying? I don't really like this chapter. I don't really know what I'm talking about. Don't worry about that stuff. Just basic definition for motivation. Here's what I want to talk about whenever it comes to motivation. Motivation is fleeting, right? Motivation, sort of by definition, is temporary. Now, this sustained behavior thing, that's part of the reason that that's in the definition, right? So I know I've talked to people about working out before, going to the gym, getting on the treadmill, whatever it might be, and they're like, well, I'm waiting to be motivated. Or what's worse is they get motivated, and then they join the gym, they start going, they get on a schedule, they get on a program, whatever, and then pretty soon after that, relatively, they stop going. And what do they always say? Well, I lost my motivation. I wasn't losing the weight, I lost my motivation. I wasn't losing inches, lost my motivation. I wasn't getting any stronger, I lost my motivation. So what I tell those people is screw motivation. You don't go to the gym on motivation because of that reason, because it comes and goes. I go whenever I don't feel well. I go whenever I'm injured. I go whenever I'm sleepy, whenever I'm hungry, whenever I'm tired. Um, if you wait until you're motivated to do anything, and I'm just talking about the gym because it's the first thing that came to mind, but it could be anything. It could be looking for a job. It could be going to college. It could be signing up for that one hard class that you really don't want to take. Whatever it might be. If you wait until you're motivated, you might wait forever and never feel motivated. And once you start it, as I said, that motivation is fleeting and it could go away just like that. So forget motivation. Just do it as a duty. If you're committed to, I want to look better, I want to go to the gym, I want to lose weight, I want to be stronger, I want to be healthier, whatever your goal is, everybody has their own, then you have to just make up your mind that it's gonna happen. Not because you're motivated, not because you particularly want to go, but I get up on my work days and I have to go to work. I get up on school days and I have to go to class. I got 30 people waiting on me to show up, provide a lecture, right? I have to go. You have to put things in that category. You have to put things in the category, well, I have to go to the gym today. People are like, well, no, you worked late last night and you had this and you're not feeling well. I mean, it's a good, well, I'm sorry, but I have to go. Just like I would have to go to work, right? Or I could lose my job. So, not a big fan of motivation. I mentioned this before. This is why I was a horrible high school teacher because I don't know how to motivate other people. Um, if you're not motivated, I don't know how to give you that. Some people are great at it. I have been at the gym before, and I've been asked to spot people, and I don't mind. I think it's a nice thing to do. I don't have a problem with that. So I'm like, sure. And I walk over and I stand over them. I'm like, do you want to lift off? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I'm like, okay, how much help do you want? And they said, don't help me unless I really need it. All right, cool. That's what I needed to know. They they unhook, they come down, and they start doing their how many reps they're gonna do, and I'm just standing there looking like I'm bored because I am. And then they get stuck a little bit, and then I'll put my hands there, and I'll just kind of slowly lift it back up and rack it, and I'm like, all right, and I walk away. That's it. Now I see other people that do that same thing, and they're like, come on, man, you got this. It's all you. You got this. You got. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that's great. I don't have that in me. I am not wired to do that. I feel silly. It feels fake. And honestly, I think you have to have a certain amount of I care for this individual or people in general. Like, I want you to do better, and I don't. I just absolutely don't have that. I mean, you're here, more power to you. Glad you're here, but it's not my responsibility to push you to the next rep, whatever. So anyways, that's just kind of my own fault, and those faults bleed into this chapter such that it's difficult for me to really teach it. I feel like it's a foreign subject for me. All right, so motive is kind of the root here for motivation. Motive is a need or desire that energizes and directs behavior towards a goal. So what is your motive, right? What is your reasoning? As I said before, is it I want to get stronger? Is it I want to lose weight? Is it I want to lose inches? Is it I want to reshape the look of my body? Is it I want to be healthier cardiovascularly? I want to have more energy, more stamina. There's all kinds of reasons, all kinds of things that you can have that would be a motive to go to the gym. Again, just as one example. Possible motives here to study, right? It's more maybe appropriate to a classroom setting. Some people, their motive is they want to pass, right? I mean, I'm going to study not because I want to, right? So again, we're looking at motivation, and we're not talking about wants. We're talking about needs, right? Nobody wants to study, right? Now, it is a need, especially for certain classes, right? Certain classes you are not going to listen to a lecture and then show up 3 weeks later for the exam and pass it. Anatomy and physiology, perfect example. That class kicked my butt. I really had to struggle in that class to pull off a B plus, which is odd for me, because I didn't know how to study. Every class that I've taken before that, all the way through a PhD, has come pretty easily for me, and I haven't ever really had to put a whole lot of effort into anything, and I've made pretty much straight A's my whole collegiate career, but I've taken easy stuff. Criminal justice classes, blow off. Business classes, some of them are a little difficult, but they're not that hard. Psychology, I don't think is difficult at all. And then also I'm taking anatomy and physiology. Well, now we're talking, a much more difficult classes, especially A&P2. That class was much more difficult. So, my motive was I want to pass this class, and they preach to you if you're thinking about nursing school, which I was contemplating. They look at your A&P scores, and you want to have A's in those classes, or you might not get into nursing school. So, again, my motive was not just a desire to pass, but a pass with a certain grade. So, my motive became my motivation to sit down and study. Another motive that you might have, depending on your situation, might be anxiety about failing. Man, I had one student one time, holy moly. He made an A on the first test, A on the second test, and for whatever reason, bombed the third test. And I don't think comparatively they're any more difficult than one another, but for whatever reason, he bombed it. And he sat there like his world ended, and he just was in disbelief because I passed the math at the beginning of class, and then I go on with the lecture. And the whole lecture, he was just staring and looking off into space. I was actually a little worried about him. And so after class, I asked him about it. And he told me, I misunderstood when the exam was. I didn't know that we had an exam that day. And I'm really good at cramming. So I usually cram the night before and I ace the exams. But I didn't even read the last chapter. And I didn't study at all because I thought the test was next week. And I was like, okay, well, it's no sweat. Everybody does poorly on a test in their collegiate career. It's probably not the last time that it'll happen, so it's not that big a deal. You'll still easily get a B in the class, maybe even still an A. And he was like, no, you don't understand. My parents are going to disown me. And he got like a C minus. He got like a 70. or something like that. And he was talking about his parents disowning him. So, again, we have different life situations going on, right? So his grade was like important to him because he had fears of going home and having to explain that he failed and the shame and embarrassment that he was going to face in his household. So that might be his motive to study. Some people have a financial motive, right? I give you $20 for every A, $10 for every B, but for every C you're grounded, and for every D you're big time grounded, and give me your phone, right? So maybe it's a sort of a financial motive. Um, then we have people that are motivated through self-achievement, right? I know, when I sat through Lone Star as a student, this is just a couple of years ago, and I was taking microbiology, AMP1, AMP2, nutrition. What else did I take? Chemistry. I was taking all the basic sciences because I haven't had those classes before. They're not necessary for a psych degree. And I don't like not knowing stuff. So I don't like the fact that I didn't know anything about chemistry. So I just thought I'd take chemistry. Well, I was also a professor at the college, and there was a few people that knew who I was, and they got out. And when you are a PhD sitting in a class, you can't get the lowest grade in the class. Like that's just you have kind of a reputation to uphold, right? I mean, I have all this education, and I may not be the best at chemistry in this class, and I may not care. I don't want to be a chemist, right? But there is again a certain sort of bar that I have to feel like I have to live up to. So that self-achievement for me kicked in, and it motivated me to study and to go out and find YouTube videos to practice and things like that. So I mean, I kind of went above and beyond to make sure that I got an A in that class. Social stigma of failing, that might motivate others. So one thing that I noticed about one little quick story. So whenever I worked in the prison that I worked at, for the first year and a half, maybe almost 2 years, I was just a prison guard, regular old prison guard. And then a position came open in the inmate laundry. And I was interested in that position for two reasons. Number one, the first shift had the captain that was over the laundry, and he left after the first shift was over, and I was working the second shift, which means I show up for work, I brief with him, and then he leaves, and I'm on my own. And I don't have anybody micromanaging me. I don't have anybody breathing down my neck, looking over my shoulder. So I was very excited about that. I don't like being micromanaged, so I liked the fact that I don't have to constantly worry about sergeants and lieutenants like looking over me. I was outside of that chain of command. It went captain of the laundry and then assistant warden and warden. That was the chain of command, and all of them were gone. So I really liked that. The second reason is because it was air conditioned. It was an air conditioned office because the laundry puts off so much heat because the dryers have to have air conditioning. It's the only place on the unit other than the captain's office, the major's office, the warden's office, and the laundry. They're the only places that have AC on the entire unit. So I was a big fan of that. So anyways, so I took that job and became basically the manager over about 40 inmates that were all mostly lifelong convicted murderers. Most of them. Some of them were sex offenders and some drug offenses, but most of them were murder. And my job was to tell them, by the way, I was 20, started working there 97. So I guess I was like 25, 26, 20, 27 years old. So I'm 27 years old. Is that right? I was 22 years old. My math sucks. Sorry. I don't know. Anyways, so I'm sleepy. I haven't taken my nap before work today. Sorry. So anyways, where was I? Oh, I sat down and I met with every single inmate that worked for me, and I got to know them by name. I don't like calling them inmate, so it was Mr. Walby and Mr. Montgomery and Mr. Brown and Mr. Crosby or Krause and Mr. Burnett and so on and so forth, right? And that was very unique to them. They had not been given that, ounce of respect since they were wearing white uniform, right? So so that got their attention, and I kind of asked a little bit about their personal history, kind of like a job interview, but they already had the job, right? But I needed to know what motivated them to do better because they don't get paid. they get kind of brownie points towards parole, but many of them aren't looking at a parole hearing for 10, 15, 20 years. So, that's so far down the line. Why do you come to work every day? I mean, you could just say, I'm not going. And of course, you get written up. But, why? Some of them had like hepatitis, so they couldn't work in food services. They couldn't work on the field crews because of their classification. So there wasn't a whole lot of places they could work, right? So the laundry was kind of like the last stop for them. So they're not going to lose their job. So it was interesting to talk to them and see their different motivations. And I had to play to their individual motivations. And I think that's what a good manager does. I think a good manager learns what motivates individuals, if you can. I mean, if you're managing 200 people, obviously that's going to be something you're not going to be able to do. But, if you have a management crew that's small enough, that's intimate enough that you can get to know the people, and you know what drives them. Because, like, for me, I'm not motivated by money. I absolutely have never cared about that. I left a $60,000+ a year engineering job to go be a cop for $35,000. I left that job to go to the feds. I was making six figures. I went from six figures to what did I do after that? Being a teacher, making literally half of what I was making before. You make some adjustments in your lifestyle and you move forward. I mean, it's whatever. I've never been materialistic and spoiled to those things, so money is not a driving factor for me. Um, and as a matter of fact, when I got hired at Amazon over the summer, which is just supposed to be a summer job, but I kind of like it, so I think I'm going to stay for a little while. Um, but when I got hired there, they actually got hired at a warehouse off of Ella Boulevard, and the start date conflicted with my son's birthday. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to start on that date. So I pushed it off. I gave up my spot, basically. And I said, just next time you have a spot open, just let me know. And so a spot came open somewhere else, but the pay was it was like $2,000 a year different. Not that much, really. I mean, I don't think you would really notice that in a weekly paycheck. Um, but I was like, I'll take that. It's a little bit closer to my house. It's like 4 minutes closer, so I'll take that. And the manager made a big deal about, oh, well, the pay, it's a little less. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's okay. And he's like, okay, okay. And he was just blown away that I gave up that 2 grand to go to, a different warehouse. I'm like, yeah, but it's closer. So, it's more convenient. There's less traffic. There's less gas money. It's more time that I get to spend home because I'm commuting less. I mean, I think it pays for itself. It's fine. So other people, absolutely, they drive across town for that extra, $50 a week or whatever it is, right? So my point here is that we all have individual motivations, all right, with different motives that drive us towards our particular goals. Um, all right, so we have primary drives, and then we have secondary drives also. Primary drives are states of tension or arousal that arise from a biological need and they are unlearned. So things like hunger and thirst are primary. We have a primary drive to sustain that need, right? I'm thirsty. I am going to drink something. I am hungry. I am going to eat. And here's an interesting one. Sex. Sex is considered a primary drive. Now, how weird is that, right? So it's interesting to some that would be considered a primary drive and not like kind of an optional one, right? I mean, look at priests. Priests take a vow of celibacy. So do monks. I mean, just certain religions. What about people that, I guess there's certain situations that might occur for your everyday person. Maybe somebody loses a spouse to something, tragic accident or something like that, and they say, I'll never be with anybody ever again. And so they just deny their primary drive towards sex. What if it happens when they're young? What if they're like in their, mid-20s and they're newly married and then immediately something tragic happens? They just say, oh, I could never lay with another woman because I'm so in love with my ex-wife. And that's admirable. It's very admirable. But they're going against the primary drive. Do you think that person is going to satisfy that sex drive in some other kind of way? It might not be with another person. It might just be alone, if you know what I'm talking about. But it's still there. And there's an argument to be made. By the way, my girlfriend is Catholic. I am absolutely not dissing on Catholics whatsoever. So please don't take offense to this if you're Catholic, and I'm sure many of you are. But there is a big argument to be made that this vow of celibacy, which goes against its primary drive of sex, is what often causes priests to do some of the sexual misconduct allegations that they do. It's not that pedophiles or yeah, usually it's pedophiles. It's not pedophiles are driven to priesthood. It doesn't go that direction. Usually it's priesthood causes the vow of celibacy, and that vow of celibacy causes all of this pent up sexual libido, as Freud would say, to want to come out somehow, right? Well, women talk, right? So I don't want to go that route. Children just seem like they have more access to them. They're easier to victimize, possibly keep quiet. So there's at least there are theories. Okay, I'm not saying this is my theory, but there are at least theories that are backed by psychoanalytic theories in and of themselves that this primary drive cannot be sort of squashed down. It cannot be overlooked, ignored. It's too powerful. So that's always kind of an interesting talk, right? And there's always people that are like, I could go without sex. It's not that big a deal. They just don't have that much sex drive. Usually it's women, not men, but it could be either way, right? So this notion of primary drive is just a state of tension or arousal. And arousal is not sexual arousal. Arousal is just like that feeling of need, right? I'm going to skip most of this stuff, guys. Work motivation, achievement motivation, intrinsic motivation. All right, so let's talk about intrinsic motivation a little bit, because I think that's going to be covered more on the next slide. So there's a difference between, actually, let me just go to that. All right, so we have intrinsic motivation, and we have extrinsic motivation. So people who are intrinsically motivated, right? Intrinsic means internal, inside. They're motivated by a sense of achievement, a sense of curiosity, interest, pride, right? So like, I'm going to brag just for a second, so forgive me. So at work, at Amazon, they have several different kinds of machines, right? They have forklifts, they have something called a reach, which is a different kind of forklift that the forks actually extend, pick something up and then bring it back. And that's kind of important because the width of the aisles can be a little narrower, and you can turn, get towards the bin, raise up to where you need to be, and then extend it onto the shelf instead of driving it onto the shelf. So you can have narrower aisles and therefore more of them. So we have forklifts, we have reach, we have something called a clamp, which looks like a forklift with these two big paddles that literally squeeze the box, and then they inflate these like air bladders just a little bit so they can literally pick up the whole stack of boxes and set them on a pallet. They have something called a turret, which is this big machine that the forks are sideways, and it goes down these very narrow aisles, and it's on a guide wire, and then the forks come up sideways and extend off to the side to stow whatever material. So I'm a trainer for all of that. I train everybody on all of these different pieces of equipment. And then we also have something called a side rider. That's basically a pallet jack it's electric and you can ride on it. You can transport things across the warehouse on that. So when I first started, I'm in my like early 40s, right? And most of the warehouse workers are like 20. So I kind of feel like I have something to prove, right? Like I don't want to be that old guy that everybody's making fun of, right? I mean, this is just a side job for me because I was bored and I'm tired of being lazy doing this all day. So I feel like I had something to prove in that regard. Physically, I feel like I have something to prove. Again, you got the title, the education, all that. A college professor and he's working in a warehouse? Like, what the heck? So, I've always had jobs that were way up here, that are stressful, and it required a lot of thought and intellect, and you're in the microscope, right? I mean, you've got government subcommittees looking at your work. You've got the public looking at your work. You've got a classroom of students looking at your work. And now all of a sudden, I'm just turned loose, and my job is put that stuff on those shelves. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that, right? I don't even have to take my brain to work. So there's a certain sense of pride that I get from going to this job and running circles around everybody. I mean, I just do. My numbers are literally, I'm here, and then if you add the second guy and the third guy together, they're not doing as much work as I am. You should see me at work. It's like I'm running a race for 12 hours. I don't take 2 minutes of a break at all. I'm just constantly go, 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 go. That's why I'm so exhausted whenever I'm home, right? But people are like, why do you kill yourself like that, right? I mean, you make the same amount of money as that guy who doesn't do that. And it's every job I've ever had has been that way. When I was a police officer, I answered about 22 calls per shift was my average. The number two guy was about 16. And then further down the list, the average for our sector would be closer to about 10. I'm doing 22 to his 10. And people would say, why? I mean, we're salaried. We make the same amount of money. You don't get paid by the call. Well, but I know I'm number one. And not only am I number one, I'm like Michael Jordan number one, right? Like so far number one. People don't even fight to try to compete. People are competing for number two and going, oh, well, Daniel's in a league of his own. Like we can't, nobody can keep up with that crazy dude, right? Pretty much every job I've ever had, I've been like that because I have this sense of achievement, right? I'm very competitive. I got to win. I'm not doing it for more money. I'm not doing it for praise. I'm not doing it for affirmation because you don't get that, right? When you're that guy, by the way, and I found this out the hard way, when you're that guy, people don't come up to you and go, dang, you're really good at your job, man. Good job. People don't do that. That's not human nature. People come to you and they go, dude, why are you acting like that, man? Why don't you just slow down a little bit? And they walk away. You're not like us. And so if you're not like us, then we don't like you, right? That's the attitude people have. People come to you and they say, man, you're blowing the curve, right? You ever had a professor that grades on a curve, which I hate doing that. And then there's that one person that gets 100 on every test. And so it blows the curve for the class. Everybody hates that person that gets 100, right? That's me. So this intrinsically motivated thing, that one I can relate to. And I respect the fact that some people can be driven by a sense of curiosity. I was watching Away on Netflix. By the way, it's kind of terrible. It's not really that good. But once I start something, I had to finish it. So I had to finish the whole season. So I watched that, and I probably looked up about maybe 20 things on Wikipedia while I was watching that show. They talk about somebody develops kind of a space blindness thing, and I thought, oh, is that a thing? So I looked it up and read all about space blindness, and then somebody made a sex joke, and I thought, has anybody had sex in space? I had to look that up. By the way, the answer is no. Not confirmed anyway. So my sense of curiosity is always driving me forward, right? Always making me seek out new information, looking things up. I am on my phone looking something up pretty much all the time because I like to know things. I don't like to feel ignorant about a subject. So that's somebody that's intrinsically motivated. Now, somebody who is extrinsically motivated, you can't get them to do anything unless you pay them, right? They might be motivated to study because they need certain grades, right? So that grade would be an extrinsic motivator for them. They don't go to their job and do well because there's a sense of pride in doing a job well. They think if I do my job well, I might get a promotion. And then if I do that job well, I might get another promotion. And so the career and the idea of promotions is actually their motivator to do a job well. But let's say they get to that top level of matter of fact, I got a buddy at the gym that is actually a warehouse worker, and he is trying to convince me to go over to his company and be an operations manager, which is way up there. And I have the resume for it, I have the experience for it, no reason I couldn't do it. And I'm like, and he said that his general manager absolutely loves him and would put him in that position in a heartbeat, but he can't because he is an ex-con. He went to prison and did time for selling dope, and the company will hire him as a warehouse worker, but he is not allowed to hold any management position, which I think is bullshit. But anyways, so he can't go any higher than where he's at. But yet he goes to work every day and he works pretty much like me. He works circles around everybody. And that's fascinating to me because he doesn't make any more money. He can't progress any higher up in the company. But he has kind of an inferiority complex because people look at him as the ex-con, and he needs to hold his own, right? He needs to not just be as good as everybody else, but he needs to do it better than everybody else. That way, people kind of look past his, his sort of shady history. So, anyway, so this is one big thing about motivation, right? We have intrinsic and extrinsic. So understand that if you're sort of internally motivated for your sense of pride or achievement or whatever, then that's intrinsic. That's me. And then if it's like the only thing that really motivates you to do something is people are going to pay you or people are going to, give you compliments, things like that, then that's an extrinsic motivator. All right. Couple of theories here. I'm really not going to go over these too much. The drive. Okay, let's talk about drive first. A drive is an internal sense of, internal state of tension or arousal that is brought about by an underlying need that an organism is motivated to reduce. So the easiest thing to talk about is hunger, right? So, for instance, if you're hungry, what happens? Your stomach growls. If you're really hungry, sometimes maybe you get a headache, right? So you have a headache going, your stomach is growling, you start to get cranky. And so all of these are an internal state of tension, right? I have this sense of tension that I need to reduce. Well, how do I reduce that? Well, I know where it's coming from, right? This internal tension is coming from hunger. How do you cure hunger? You eat, right? So you go put food in you, right? Consumption of calories, right? Satiates that feeling, and now you feel good again. So this is the drive reduction theory. Theory of motivation suggesting that biological needs create internal states of tension or arousal, which are called drives, which organisms are then motivated to reduce. One other component there is this notion of homeostasis. If you're unfamiliar with that word, it's our natural tendency to be sort of balanced and in the middle, right? Everything is like that. Have you ever eaten a meal and you're absolutely stuffed and you feel gross, right? You don't want to do anything and you feel bad about yourself? That's no good. And we've all been super starving, right? I'm actually pretty hungry right now. So neither one of those are good, right? You want to be in the middle. You don't want to be hungry, but you don't want to be stuffed. You want to be just right. You can be too hot. You can also certainly be too cold, right? Pretty much anything. You can have too much sleep. Believe it or not, it can happen. And then if I get too much sleep, I feel lethargic. And it's like I can't shake the sleepiness. I'm getting too much sleep, and it's like my body won't turn back on to full power kind of thing. It's weird. Plus, I get headaches. I get really bad headaches if I sleep too much. And of course, if you don't sleep enough, problems there. So, whatever you look at, right? Whether it's hunger or thirst or sleep or whatever, right? We sort of have this Goldilocks thing, right? Too much is not good. Too little is not good. We need that that middle ground. So that's homeostasis. All right, arousal theory is a theory of motivation suggesting that people are motivated to maintain an optimal level of alertness and physical and mental activation. So this is like looking at a kid that's in, he's taking classes and he's super bored, right? And so he's not really paying attention in class. And the next thing you know, they put him in a gifted and talented classes and now he does very well, right? Because when you put them in that low-level class, they're bored, right? They're not maintaining an optimal level of alertness. That's why they're staring out the window, putting their head on their desk, they're doodling on their, notebooks, not taking notes, things like that. So you want to motivate that person to be challenged, for instance. So that is the arousal theory. Now, every individual has a different level of arousal, right? Of sort of peak arousal. So some people would be stimulated by a nice Sunday drive. That would be fine, right? Other people, that's boring, right? So for some it's good, for some it's boring. And you can look at any aspect of somebody's life, and you can look at a job. Some people would be thrilled to sit in a cubicle and have a steady paycheck. And other people think that sounds like torture. I'm one of them. So the idea of sitting at a desk and crunching numbers on a computer all day is absolutely not appealing to me because it's not, it doesn't speak to my level of arousal, right? And then if you look at my jobs, right, prison guard, been in a couple skirmishes, doing that job. Obviously, police officer, foot chases, car chases, shootings. I mean, I've done all of that stuff. All of the jobs that I've had, right, arousal levels way up here. So that's part of the reason that I like, again, the job that I'm at now, because I kind of want to break from all that. Like, I guess it's an aging thing, and I'm kind of coming down off of that. I don't really need all that up there job. But the reason that I was thinking about doing this paramedic school was because I thought it would be cool to kind of have a toe in the water still. Like, if I could get my paramedic's license in the next year in my free time, because, why not? Then maybe life flight. That'd be kind of cool, right? I go to my warehouse boring job for 3 days out of the week. That pays all the bills. And then my other days, a couple of those days, maybe I fly around in a helicopter and save people's lives. So I get to have kind of the best of both worlds, right? I have kind of like a dual life thing going on. Um, so it's kind of interesting to me. I think that speaks to this arousal theory. I think there's probably something to that. I'm gonna skip that one. All right, let's talk about Yerkes Dotson. Oh, that should be capitalized. Look at that. Corrections on the fly. Yerkes Dotson. So this is two researchers that came up with this theory that makes very intuitive sense, right? That the optimal level of arousal, if you can push an employee to that, will then yield the optimal performance, right? If you give somebody a task at work that is super boring, then they're not going to do much, right? This is going to be them. Now, start challenging them. Start giving them quicker deadlines. Start making the work more intellectually challenging, right? Or even more physically challenging, right? So now we're increasing that level of arousal, right? We're going to wake them up. And now they're going to be up in here. Now, there's a limit. That's why this is shaped like a bell curve. If we keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, right, eventually you overstress them and they either give up, they burn out, they shut down in some kind of way. So this is kind of interesting. I've done a lot of research and talked to people that I've worked with before that were Navy SEALs. So I know a lot about BUDS. BUDS is what Navy SEAL School, right? It's called Basic Underwater Demolition for SEAL Training, and kind of the underlying reason for having BUDS is because everybody thinks they know what their limit is, right? I can run this many miles, I can do this many push-ups, I can't do anything more than that. I need this amount of sleep per night or whatever. And basically BUDS flips all that on its head, right? They have something called Hell Week, and in Hell Week, you do PT for about 20 hours a day, physical training for about 20 hours a day. And they are holding telephone logs here, then they push them up above their head. Then they have small boats. They have small boat drills out in the surf. The water's about 50 degrees, depending on what time of year it is. They roll around in the sand. They're covered in sand. And they're only allotted about 4 hours of sleep a night for a week. Now, when I say 4 hours of sleep, you might think, oh, well, I could totally do that. But it's 4 hours of sleep in the sand, in the water, while people are yelling and screaming at you, and you sit in like a centipede, right? So you sit with your legs here, and the next guy's sitting in front of you, leaning back on you, and the next guy's in front of that, leaning back on him, and you're in the surf. And so you go to sleep, but the waves are literally over your head, and so you're not really sleeping, right? They have to put it on paper that you're getting 4 hours of sleep, otherwise it would be like, torture. But you're not actually sleeping. So you go a week with no sleep. So people start getting, delusional. People start hallucinating. I mean, it's not at all uncommon to have that. But when you graduate, you don't ring that bell, and you get through that week, and then you complete all the other evolutions that come after that. You look back, and you're like, nothing can stop me. That's why they have the mentality that they do, is because they realized you could do so much more than you thought you could do. What if I told you I would tie your hands and feet together and throw you in 16 feet of water You think you could live for an hour and not drown? Could you spend an hour? And by the way, you have gear. So, if you're one of those people that are naturally buoyant and you can float, and you just think, well, I'll just lay on my back and float. No, you won't. You're going to have about 30 pounds of gear on. You think, nah, that can't be done, right? But they train you, they show you how to do it, and really it's only about overcoming your fear. Once you understand the technique of controlling your descent, right, and hitting the ground and then kicking up, a couple of kicks up to the top, you break the surface, you take a breath, you slowly blow out it's called drown proofing. They teach you how to do it. Once you know how to do it, you're good to go. So the whole point of that training is to constantly increase this level of arousal, right? The challenge, the physical, the mental challenge, and we want to get this optimal performance out of people. And some people, this level, which is determined by the Navy says we want people to be able to do these things at this level in this time frame. So they have determined this because it is possible. You have people that are here that freak out, I can't do it, it's too hard, and they ring the bell and they're out. So this Yerkes Dodson law is it's a little bit intuitive, but it's also fairly insightful, right? You want to challenge people, increasing the level of arousal until you get their optimum level of performance, but you don't want to push them past that and burn them out. All right, we've talked about Maslow before. Here is his hierarchy of needs. The basic needs are these bottom two rungs. The middle two are the psychological needs, and then the top one is self-fulfillment. I have seen recently that humanism is still kind of a thing. I have seen recently they have added a couple of tiers to this. That's what they like to do. Super annoying to me that they take somebody and they just add one thing to it so they can put their name in a publication. But at any rate, one thing that I'll say about this that's interesting, and I hope I haven't used this already as an example, but in the educational system, right, this is taught, right, a lot. So a lot of teachers are very familiar with this. And one of the things that they said was that students are coming to school and they're not having their basic needs met at home. So they're unable to get any of this psychological needs. So that's how this works, right? Like anything, you have to have a good foundation before you can build on top of it, right? You can't build this stuff on thin air. And if you don't have these, then that's essentially what you would be doing. So you have to have this need met before you can move up to safety. You have to have safety before you can move on to belonging, love. That's the point of this pyramid. So they go home, they're not being fed. Maybe they don't have, drinkable water like Flint, Michigan kind of thing. Warmth, maybe they don't have electricity. Maybe their situation, they don't get rest. So they're not having their physiological needs met at home. So as a teacher, as a school system, what can we do about that? Well, not a lot in that setting, but when they come here to our school, we can do a little bit about that. We can offer them breakfast, right? We have water fountains, so we can get these basic needs met, right? We can make them feel safe and secure while they're here in school, right? We have police officers in the school doors are locked, everybody knows, don't unlock the door for strangers, that kind of thing. So, you're safe, you're in a classroom, you'll be protected by your teacher, by other personnel, by your peers. So we get all this stuff met. Now we can start looking up to this. So they use this platform to lobby for more money to feed breakfasts to students, because students were coming to school hungry and they were not paying attention in class because all they could think about was, I can't wait for lunch. Then they go to lunch and they eat at that's the only meal that some of these students were having. And so solely based on this theory, they said, okay, well, we'll try it. So they did a pilot program and they put breakfasts in certain low-income area schools, and lo and behold, grades started improving, disciplinary actions got better, meaning students were behaving a little bit better, and they said, oh man, maybe there's some truth to that. Now, is that proof of this theory? Not necessarily, but there is probably something to it. So meet the needs down here, and then these needs further up can then be potentially achieved. That's kind of the takeaway from that. Not gonna worry about that. All right, this is in the book, and we talk about it, and I don't love this part, but it's an easy test question to throw out there, so I'll just shoot through it real quick. So the sexual response cycle, 4 phases that make up the human sexual response in both males and female. So Masters and Johnson, I don't know if you know this, they've done tons and tons of research in the field of sex. They have for years and years and years, right? You think of Masters and Johnsons, you think of like some of the products that they have, right? But this is one of their sex studies, basically. So they define four phases. The first one being excitement, the second one being plateau, which I hate because when most people think of plateau, that's like the highest that you can get, and it's only the second phase, so it's kind of a weird name for it. So you have excitement, and then plateau, and then orgasm, and then resolution. So going through them really quickly, excitement is the beginning of a sexual response. So for men, men are more visual, and women are more tactile. Um, that's just how people are wired differently. I read an interesting article yesterday and had a conversation with somebody about this. This woman was at a gym wearing nothing but a sports bra and leggings, and she was approached by management. This is in another state, and she was asked to please put a shirt on because several members had complained that she was distracting and bothering them while they were working out. Now, she wasn't talking to anybody, she was just doing her thing, but in a sports bra. I'm assuming probably spilling out of it. And people were offended and wanted her to put a shirt on. Now, meanwhile, you have guys wearing tank tops where they're cut down the side all the way here so you can see from the side, pecs and abs and obliques. And basically you can see everything, right? Nipple, everything. And nobody's saying anything about that. And so she wrote this big Instagram thing about it's a double standard and it's not fair and shouldn't be like that and blah, blah, blah. And look, I get that. Okay, I do. I absolutely get that. Should it be equitable, right? Should there be a fairness involved there? Should what's one good for one be good for the other? Well, that's complicated. And this is just my opinion, but men are wired differently than women. So it's like the mask situation, right? Let's say I got COVID, okay, and I suffered through it, and now I'm better, so my body has antibodies, and I'm not going to get it again. So I don't want to wear a mask. I'm going to go to the grocery store, and I'm not going to wear a mask, right? And then little old lady comes up, and she's like, you should wear a mask. And I said, no, I'm not worried about catching it. Well, you can be spreading it. No, I don't have it. I'm pretty sure I don't have it, and I've already had it. I'm not going to deal with that again. So there's an argument to be made there that from a logical perspective, I shouldn't have to wear a mask anymore, right? I'm not going to spread it because I have antibodies, and I'm not going to catch it because I've already had it. So I don't have to wear a mask anymore, right? But it's just one of those things, right? It's one of those things that we just do because as a society, we have to look out for each other. I have to drive 65 miles an hour on the freeway because they have to have a law that lets people know how fast you can drive. Can I safely drive faster than that? Absolutely. Why? Well, I have faster reflexes than your average person. I have way more training than your average driver. I have a high-end sports car. So you mean to tell me that 89-year-old grandma with blue hair driving a 56 Oldsmobile that just barely passes inspection can safely drive 65 miles an hour, but me and my Camaro and all of my years of professional driving training, I can't drive 66 miles an hour because that would somehow be unsafe? Of course not, right? But we have to have a law that plays to the middle, right? Are there professional race car drivers that could drive twice that speed and still be safe? Absolutely. Are there people that can drive 65 miles an hour and be a danger to everybody on the road because that's actually faster than their reflexes will allow them to drive? Absolutely. So 65 is kind of the average. So, or 55 or 70 or whatever the speed limit is. But so in regards to this, I feel like, men are wired to where if I'm working out and I'm in my zone and I'm doing my thing and I'm in my own little world and I don't care about anybody else, and some pretty girl walks by in a sports bra, it is going to draw my attention and I'm going to look away and I'm going to focus, but my mind is like, hey, check that out. And you're going to look and you're going to look, and it is distracting. Now, what if a girl is working out and a guy walks by and his shirt is kind of open? Is she wired the same way to where she's going to look and, what if he was completely naked? She'd be like, ugh, because that's not attractive. And girls don't look at that and go, oh, I'm distracted. It's just not how it works. Women would look and go, ugh, put some clothes on, even if he's like a really good looking guy. So I definitely think there's a double standard there. And, unfortunately, I mean, that's just kind of how it is. I mean, there's a double standard for PT tests for men and women. Women have to pass with a certain number of push-ups, and men have more push-ups that they have to do. Why? Men are physically stronger, and that's not an indictment that women are weak. It's just we have more muscle genetically to be able to accomplish that task. So it should be that way. Men should have to be able to bench press like a certain percentage of their body weight, and women a certain percentage of theirs. And the numerical pounds are going to be different for the two. So fairness is not always what's good for one is good for the other in the exact same quantity, right? So anyway, so back to this. I think that's kind of my argument to that. I definitely think that there should be something in the rules when you sign up. And then, like at my gym, there's actually a women's workout area, and they have most of the most popular pieces of equipment that women use sort of segregated in their own little room so that women can work out there and feel like they're not being oogled by every man in the gym, and men can work out on those similar machines or in close proximity to them and not be constantly looking over there and distracted. So, I mean, I think that's a win for everybody, but some would argue, well, it's segregation. So whatever, to each their own. So back to this, beginning of sexual response. For men, it's almost instant. It doesn't take very long. Women, it's much more gradual. Blood pressure rises, muscle tension, heart rate quickens. This is the same for both. So physiologically, men are aroused in the same way that women are aroused, as far as those things, right? Your respiration goes up, your blood pressure goes up, all of that stuff. Those physiological traits are the same for men and women. Of course, the hormones are different, and the speed at which that achieves, peak is different. All right, so the next one here is plateau. That's excitement just continues to mount. So this is where we're starting, right? This excitement, all of these things begin to rise, muscle begin to get tense, heart rate begins to quicken, and then whenever we're at plateau, they're all peaked out. And then that sustains for a while, and then the next stage is orgasm. That's the highest point of sexual pleasure. Involuntary muscle contractions for both men and women. Fun fact here about pigs, they orgasm for 30 straight minutes. I think I'd like to see a video of that, maybe, just because I'm curious. Resolution is the period after, and it's a tapering off period where the body returns to normal state. Remember we talked about homeostasis? So we have left homeostasis to excite everything. So we have risen up to here in our level of sexual arousal. Well, our body's going to bring us back down to homeostasis. So that's resolution. For men, there is a refractory state where going back up again into this excitement level, it takes a little bit of time. The younger you are, the faster this refractory state typically is. And this is very individualized, right? Some older guys, I mean, if you watch, I'm not advocating this, but like if you see some of these adult film stars that have been doing it for years and years and years, they can go for number 2 and number 3 and number 4 like back to back to back to back because I guess they've trained their body to do that or something. I'm sure they have probably testosterone supplements that they're taking to sort of help out with that. But yeah, typically as we age, this refractory state becomes longer. And for women, they don't have that, right? Women can be multi-orgasmic. They can hit one after another, after another, after another, and just keep on trucking. Totally not fair. But if guys had that, honestly, we'd never leave the bedroom, and the world, would not be the same. So, all right. So quick little Masterson-Johnson study there for good for 1 or 2 test questions. All right. So this part of the chapter is the part where we have an excellent classroom discussion that we are not going to be able to have in this format. So I'll just kind of tell you both sides of it. So sexual orientation, the directions of one's sexual interest. So there's heterosexual, homosexual, and bisexual. Now, hang on a second. I know there's like 30 categories now, right? And went from the LGBT community, right, lesbian, gay, and bisexual, to LBGT, because we got to include transsexuals. And then it was LGBTQ. And then it was LGBTQ, PRWY, XYZ, number 1, the letter 7, the number 7, whatever, right? It's got 50 different things on it. And everybody wants to distinguish their sexual orientation as distinctly different from the definitions of everything else that's already out there. So We're just going to stick, for simplicity's sake, with hetero, homo, bi. That's it. Yes, there are other ones that exist. We're not. This is not a class on gender studies, so we're not going to go into all of them. So, how is this classified? These seem like black and white questions, right? Um, it's much more gray than you might think. All right, and so I said that one time, and I didn't get the next thing out, and this big dude sitting in the class starts laughing. He's shaking his head, and I said, "Oh, do you disagree with that? I don't mean to call you out, but I'm curious." He goes, "It's pretty black and white, dude." And I was like, "How so?" And he goes, "I have no interest in men, only interested in women. I am absolutely heterosexual." And I was like, "Okay, that's fair." So let me ask you this. If you had to touch another man's private parts, would you do it? And he was like, "No, absolutely not. I'd die first." I'm like, whoa, man, you are mega straight. He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I was like, "Okay, so would you kiss another man?" He was like, "No, absolutely not." I said, "So anytime two men kiss, that's gay?" And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I said, "Okay, do you think Jake Gyllenhaal and was it Heath Ledger that were in Brokeback Mountain?" I never watched that movie, so I don't know. But I assume that they kissed in it. I said, "Are they gay?" He goes, "Yep, they gay." And I'm like, "They're both married and probably have kids. It was their job to portray these people and as actors." And he goes, "Don't matter, they're gay. If they have the ability to kiss another man, they're gay." Okay, you got some people that think this way, right? That are just concrete in the belief that, if your lips touch another man's, I said, "Okay, well, what if there was somebody dying and I had to give them mouth to mouth? Would that count as a kiss, and would I therefore be gay?" And he was like, "Yeah, you'd probably be gay for that." I mean, again, you just can't change some people's minds about that kind of stuff. So I gave him this scenario. I said, "Okay, is there a double standard on that? Is it only men or is women the same?" He said, "Nah, it's just men." I said, "Oh, okay. So let's set this scene. So you're at a frat party, right? And beer's flowing, kegs are tapped, and there's two women that are really pretty, and they're right next to each other, and they're surrounded by a crowd, and everybody starts going, 'Kiss, kiss, kiss,' and the girls kind of go, 'Ugh, really?' And they look at each other, and they're like, 'Eh,' and they're like, 'Eh.' And so they kiss, and the crowd goes crazy, and everybody cheers, and everybody gets more drunk, and the girls just kind of go off their separate ways. Are they gay?" And I look around the classroom, and about half the heads are like, "No." I mean, they're just playing around, playing to the crowd kind of thing. I'm like, "Okay, so two women can kiss to play up to the crowd to get, 30 seconds of applause or whatever, and then walk away and not be gay." And they're like, yeah, it's just women, playing around. Okay, so different scenario. You're at a frat party, beers are flowing, kegs are tapped. Two dudes are over by the keg. You see where I'm going with this? And everybody starts going, "Kiss, kiss, kiss," and they look and they're like, "Well, do you want to?" So they kiss. Are they gay? Almost universally, everybody goes, "Yep, they're gay." So two women can kiss and they're just playing. Two men can kiss and they're instantly gay and labeled so for life, by the way. Um, is that a double standard? Absolutely. And where does that come from? Well, that comes from gender norms. And we'll talk about gender norms in the social psych chapter a little bit more. But it comes from our expectation of what a man should do and what a woman should do, right? Men are, masculine and would never do that with another man. Women are pretty, and everybody thinks that. Even women think women are pretty. Guys don't think guys are hot. I don't look at, Chris Helmsworth and think, "Oh my God, he is hot," right? Now, is he a physically attractive person? He is physically perfect, right? Face, body, everything. The man doesn't have a physical flaw anywhere, right? But I'm not allowed to say he's hot or, "Yeah, he's really good looking," right? Without somebody thinking that I'm gay. So it's a really interesting topic to talk about, to have a conversation about, which again is lost in this format because, you don't probably realize your prejudices against it, your sort of way of thinking that's been sort of drilled into you by the rules of society, and now that's changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Obviously, everybody knows that. um, but let's ask this question. Let's say two women are roommates in college, right? And they go out, they get drunk, and they come back home, and they're you know palling around and talking, and they both kind of are hit with the mood, and they thought, why not just try it once? And so they try it, and then they decide, yeah, you're pretty, and kissing you was kind of fun, and all the touching and things that we did were interesting, but I don't think I really like that. And you never have another experience with a woman again. You tried it, didn't like it. You're not physically attracted to women. You don't have any female relationships, romantic relationships after that. Is that person gay? Are they bisexual? Most people would say, well, if they've been with men and they've been with women, then they're bisexual. Well, for life? If you had that one college experience and then 30 years later you haven't even looked twice at another woman, you're still considered bisexual because you tried it one time? I don't know if I agree with that. There's a comedian, Chad Daniels, and he does a bit about this. That's pretty funny. He's talking about a threesome with two men with a woman. And a lot of guys would say, oh, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't want another dude that close to me and all that. And he's like, and this is crass, but this is him saying, he goes, dude, if I'm plugged in to a woman, then by definition, I am heterosexual, and anything else that is going on doesn't matter because this is my focus. And if there's a dude over here and his knee bumps into my knee, I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on this. I have absolutely no sexual interest in this man whatsoever. My interest is 1000% steered here to the woman. That is not me being bisexual. And I agree with that. I mean, he's doing a bit. He's making a joke out of it, but I mean, he's got a point. So, anyways, I usually ask, okay, guys, if you met a girl and y'all were hitting it off and been on a few dates and you really liked her, and then you found out that she had a female relationship, she had a bisexual relationship with another girl a couple of relationships ago, would that deter you? Like, she's had boyfriends before and she's had a girlfriend before. Would you still date her? And I don't think I've ever had a guy say no. Pretty much they always go, yeah, that's kind of hot, actually. Well, then I asked the girls in the class, if you were, dating a guy and he was perfect and a couple dates, everything was going great, and then you found out that a couple of relationships ago he had a fling with another guy, would you date him? And almost universally, women go, nope, no, I wouldn't be able to deal with that, nope. So, again, are we classifying somebody as heterosexual or homosexual based on what their current preference is? Can you flip-flop? Or are we going to look at their past preferences and say, if it's ever happened, then you carry this label for life? What about the number of experiences? Again, what if you only did it once and you thought, nah, I didn't really like that? What if you're dating a girl that's out of your league, like way out of your league, and she's freaky, and she's like, look, I'll date you, but part of the reason that I want to date you is because I want you to be my slave and do what I tell you to do. So if you want this, right, then you're going to have to do what I say. And you're like, well, I do want that. So, yes, ma'am. And then she's like, I want you to touch that guy's junk. And you're like, and then you think to yourself, I've picked up dead bugs, right? I've picked up dog poop. Like, I've touched really gross things. My hands can always be washed, right? You want me to do that, and you will get something out of it, and I get you out of it? All right. And does that make you gay? Some people would argue yes, right? Like the dude from the class, he'd be like, yep, if your hand touched that, you're gay. Other people would say, no, because you're not sexually attracted to that person. You're doing this thing to satisfy the fetish of somebody that you're with, but you get no pleasure out of it. So, the fact that you can do it, again, I can pick up poop, I can pick up dead bugs, right? Those are gross things, but I don't get anything out of it. Now, if I'm smearing poop all over my body, now that's a whole different sexual perversion that we're talking about, right? That's the difference between getting something out of it and it's just a necessary thing that you have to do at the dog park, right? So, again, this is an interesting conversation, but it's hard to do one way. So, where does gayness come from? Is it a genetic thing? Is it a choice that we make? Well, of course, nobody knows, so we know that. But there are twin studies that show higher than expected prevalence rates were twins that were reared apart, so different environments but same genes. Both of them end up being gay. So there lends a little bit of credibility to there's some genetic predisposition component probably at work. There is, I've only seen one or two things mentioned about this. The hypothalamus sizes are slightly different in the brain. So there could be, again, a genetic component to this, but none of this has been definitively proven yet. So it's probably a very complex interaction between nature and nurture. Homophobia, we all know what that is, an irrational hostility or fear displayed towards homosexuals. Gender identity is one's personal sense of being male or female, regardless of chromosomal and phenotypic sex. So there used to be a disorder called gender identity disorder. And if you were born this gender and you identified as a different gender, it was a qualifiable mental illness. You were mentally ill. I'm a woman, but I feel like a man. You're mentally ill. They have done away with that in the newer version of the DSM-5, but they didn't completely eradicate it. What they did was they changed it to gender dysphoria. So it used to be gender identity disorder, and the focus was the identity portion. If you identify wrongly, then you're disordered. Now they've changed it to gender dysphoria, meaning if you have some sort of anxiety or guilt or fear or depression, and it's centered around the fact that you are not aligned with your proper phenotypic gender, then that is going to be given the name gender dysphoria. In other words, your depression is caused from your gender misidentification. So it's not a disorder to represent yourself as the opposite sex anymore, as far as this goes, but they do want to say, they don't want to say, oh yeah, you're depressed. They want to give it a specific name, gender dysphoria. You're depressed because of this reason. So in a way, they've sort of taken the stigma away, and they've just sort of applied a different name that's in reference to the feeling that happens because of that. So here's another good question. Should we acquiesce to the subjective feelings of how someone identifies? So again, you have somebody that comes up with a deep voice like this, big old Adam's apple sticking out, right? A little bit of stubble, but they have a blonde wig and they're wearing a dress. And they say, I'm a ma'am. Call me ma'am. Do I have an obligation to say, yes, ma'am? Miss, it's your turn. Miss, the line needs to move forward. Yes, ma'am. Do I have an obligation to do that because you want me to? Well, look, we live in an individualized society, right? We relish individualism, right? We look to people that, like celebrities, that dress differently, that blaze, fashion trends, and they're being an individual. Lady Gaga wearing all the crazy outfits, right? And we praise that because she's different and unique. So we have this individualized mentality where I'm going to do what I want to do. So, for what, hundreds of years, I guess, men have been sir and women have been ma'am. And now you have this person who looks like a man but wants me to call them ma'am or, Mrs. or something. Well, I'm an individual and I don't have to do that. I don't want to. But then you have other people that say, well, look, if it doesn't hurt anything, and that clearly doesn't hurt you to call them whatever makes them happy. So if it makes them happy to call them ma'am, call them ma'am. Who cares, right? And there's I think, equal merit to both arguments, personally. I'm very much 100% like, I really don't care. I don't think they're wrong. I don't think they're wrong. I think they're right. I think they're right. I'm about as middle of the road on this argument as I think you can get. So I'll put a video on there and see what you guys think of it. I'll put a couple of videos on there. Again, I'm kind of a fan of Ben Shapiro for his debate prowess more than his specific stances on things. But he does this panel interview one time, and he's sitting next to what I described. Very big, burly guy with long blonde hair. Very clearly a man, though. In fact, a former Navy SEAL, as a matter of fact. And Ben Shapiro refuses to address him as ma'am, and he calls him sir on more than one occasion. And the guy at one point puts his arm on Ben Shapiro. By the way, is a pretty small statured guy. He looks like a high school student, but he's a Harvard graduate and one of the most brilliant debaters I've ever seen. Nobody has ever won a debate against him on any topic. He can out-debate anybody because he is firm in his stance. He researches both sides really, really well. He does not get drawn into sort of your classic debate, baits and switches and that kind of thing. I mean, he knows how to debate. So the guy's not going to win the argument against him. So he puts his arm around his shoulder and he tells him, if you call me ma'am again, you're going to be, what did he say? He said, you're going to be going home in a hospital, or you're going to be going home in an ambulance. That's what he says. You're going to be going home in an ambulance. And Shapiro's like, well, that seems mildly inappropriate for a debate. I mean, you have to resort to physical threats and violence whenever you're not getting your way. I mean, look, the bottom line is you were born with a Y chromosome, which makes you, by our definitions currently, a man. And men, by our social convention, are referred to as Mr. So you're born a man, you are a man, I call you sir, I did everything right, but it's not what you want, and so I'm the bad guy? That's not how it works. Like, we can talk about changing definitions, but we haven't done that yet. We can talk about changing what does it mean to be a ma'am or a sir, but we haven't done that yet. So I'm following everything right, and you're threatening with violence. And by the way, ambulances don't take you home. They take you to the hospital, so that's a stupid thing to say. So anyways, then there's another video of, again, a very similar, I guess, trans person who was in a GameStop. And somebody said, ma'am, can I help you? And he said, sir, can I help you? And he goes, I'm a ma'am. And he loses it and starts kicking and knocking stuff over because everybody keeps addressing him as sir. Do I think we should do that? No, I don't think we should be poking the bear, right? If somebody's clearly going to be triggered by it, then it's just wrong and rude to address them as such. But it's an interesting thing to be able to give somebody carte blanche to be referred to by whatever they choose to be referred to by. There's a guy in London, I believe, that is suing to get Social Security. He's like 45, but he feels like he's 65. And so he thinks, if you can be definitively this gender but identify as this gender, why is it stopping there? Why can't we do that with age? I mean, I know what year I was born, but I feel like I'm 65. I mean, you've heard that, right? People are an old soul, right? They like older things. They go antiquing, things like that. They're just, for whatever reason, they've been drawn to things that were maybe a generation before them. So he says, look, I identify as a 65-year-old man, and I think that you should recognize that and pay me Social Security. And I think that's as equal of an argument as you'll see on anything else. My other argument to this topic that I bring up in class is, okay, so in the DSM, right, which we haven't gotten to yet, but it's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's basically a list of all the mental disorders. There is something in there called schizophrenia, which I'm sure you've heard of, right? So schizophrenics often will hallucinate, and they have delusional thoughts. One of the very common delusional thought is religious themed. So they will think that they're the Messiah or a Messiah or their God. And they might refer to them as such. They say, I am Jesus Christ. I am Jesus Christ. And you can tell through their behavior that they're delusional, that they're mentally ill. So if that person comes up to me and identifies himself as Jesus Christ, do I now have to call them Jesus? Pretty much universally people would say no. I mean, clearly they're mentally ill, right? So they're mentally ill based on what? Based on the fact that their behavior and their actions qualifies under the criteria of this mental disorder in this book, which is the go-to book for what mental disorders are, okay? So you come to me, you meet all the criteria for this mental disorder, you refer to yourself as Jesus and ask me to do so, and I don't do it. Your name is John Smith, and I'm going to call you Mr. Smith, or perhaps John, right? And I'm not a bad guy for doing so. I don't have to acquiesce to your mental disorder. How is this any different? You come to me, clearly a man, you identify as a woman, that is in the DSM, listed as a mental disorder, but for some reason I have to acquiesce to you because if I, for God forbid, call you sir based on your deep voice and Adam's apple and clearly, male features, secondary sex characteristics that I can clearly identify, I'm the bad guy. I do have to go along with your delusion, with your mental illness. I don't understand the double standard in this case. So it's a very interesting point of debate and topic. It's not something to get mad about, angry about. You can think your way, I'll think my way. They might be the same, they might be different, they might have similar points. Maybe my debate topics are way off and I'm completely wrong. I don't know. So it's an interesting thing to me to talk about and get people's different perspectives. Um, then there's the which bathroom do they go in, right? Would you feel comfortable, ladies, if there was somebody in the stall next to you and you look down and you see a size 13 shoe and you hear a cough and they're like, "No, it's okay. I identify as a woman." Would you feel comfortable with them in your bathroom? Most women probably not. Men, you walk up to the urinal. There's three of them. Right in the middle, there's a dress, long blonde hair. Somebody standing at the urinal doing their business. Right? Do you just go to the urinal next to it? Do you feel comfortable in that situation? Perhaps not. So it's a very like where do they fit in our world kind of topic that we talk about, and I don't know the answer to that. Uh, What about transgender hormone therapy and sex change recipients? At what point are they considered? If you're a man and you dress like a woman, are you a woman? Okay, arguably, probably not, right? If you're a man and you get it chopped off and you get the surgery done and you get breast implants done, are you a woman? I would argue, yeah. I mean, even though you still have that Y chromosome, if you have altered your body in such a way that you have female parts, if you strip down naked and walk through a female locker room and you're not really turning any heads, um, then at what point do we say you go from man to woman or woman to man, right? So there's an argument there, right? Some people would say never because of that chromosome. Some people would say as soon as you get rid of those, the secondary male sex parts, right? Those are gone. Or if you're a woman, they can, I guess, build one for you, right? So they build that, you have that part. So now you're a man. Like, at what point do we have that? So this is what I meant whenever I said this is a very gray area debate. I mean, there is no black and white. There is no male, female. There is no hetero, homo, bisexual. Like, there's shades of gray. All of this is gradient shades of gray. Lastly, there's a story about David Reamer. This is a super sad story. So this poor guy, poor little boy, was born. His parents went to get him circumcised, and the doctor botched the circumcision and basically cut it off. So it was so badly mangled, it was never going to be usable. It was very, sort of unsightly. There was nothing he could really do plastic surgery wise to fix it. So this doctor came in and said, I think the best thing to do is just cut it completely off and raise him as a girl. Let him know he's a girl. And so that's what they did. So they raised David as a little girl. I forgot what name they gave her. And it was a very happy, well-adjusted little girl. Up until puberty. What do you think happened then? Well, they're born a man, right? So no boobs are happening, right? There's no boy parts down there going on. But all of a sudden, sexual urges, hormonal sex urges start happening, and something's not right, right? The kid had a feeling that there's something wrong with me. I don't know what, but there's something that's doesn't feel right. And so finally, mom and dad admit, like, well, this is what happened. And he was, of course, mortified. So I've been raised a girl, but I'm actually a boy. I don't want that. I want to be a boy. So he went back to being a boy again and went back to being known as David, and just never really made the adjustment back and forth very well and ended up taking his own life. He just couldn't bear with the problems associated with this gender, this role confusion, right? Remember we talked about the Erickson's stages. So he never really properly navigated that and ended up taking his life. So can you raise a boy to just be a girl? No. You can assign all the gender specific roles, make him play with dolls or make him play with toy trucks or whatever. You can make him dress a certain way, but can't get past those hormones. Those are inside. So that was kind of a sad story. All right, emotion is a state involving physiological arousal, a cognitive appraisal of the situation that produced that state, and an outward expression of behavior. So there's three components. There's a physiological arousal, right? So there's some chemical thing that goes on. The second part is a cognitive appraisal of what the hell is going on right now. And then the third is some behavior that is now driven through the combination of physiological internal state and cognitive appraisal. Those both come together and they produce some sort of reaction. So there are three theories of emotion. I'm going to run through them quickly. They're basically the same thing, but they occur in slightly different orders. So the James Long theory of emotion, put together by William James, and I forgot the Long guy, but they both kind of had similar theories that came out at the same time, so they combined it. So this is the order that they believe that things happen in when it comes to emotion. That an individual first perceives a stimulus. Remember we talked about sensation and perception. Remember there was that video, or that picture rather, of the girl that was like doing her business outside and there was a lion behind her, right? She wasn't scared, right? Well, why not? Well, she's not scared because she doesn't perceive it. It's behind her, and it's camouflaged in the grass, and she didn't probably hear it, so none of her senses are peaked towards it. So this is a pretty obvious number one, but it's an also very relevant one, right? In order for us to have any sort of emotional reaction to something, we have to first perceive a stimulus. We can't react to something that we don't know is there, okay? So the first thing we have to do is we have to perceive a stimulus. The second thing is we have to experience some physiological response, okay? This is automated. So we see something and we feel some kind of response. Now it depends on what I see. If I see a spider, right, and it's in close proximity, I'm going to have a physiological response to that, right? My heart's going to beat a little faster. My eyes are going to get wider. I'm going to get tunnel vision on that threat, right? Because some spiders can jump, and for all I know, it's going to jump into my mouth, and I would have to kill myself. Like, I don't think I could deal with that on an emotional level, right? So my first thing is I'm going to put a little distance between me and that potentially jumping spider, and I'm going to retreat to get something to kill it, like a machine gun or something, right? By the way, I don't like spiders. So I'm going to perceive it. I'm going to experience a physiological response. The physiological response is then going to be interpreted. So remember I said this is automated, right? This is kind of it happens instantaneously, right? I see it and it's a threat, and I'm going to go into that automatic nervous system, stimulated state of arousal. And then my brain goes, hey, why is my heart beating so fast? Hey, why are my palms sweaty? Hey, why do I have so much adrenaline going on? And then I'm going to become consciously aware of what just happened. Now, this all happens in a fraction of a second, okay? But they happen, according to this theory, in this order. I perceive a threat. I have a physiological response. I then interpret that response, and I then make some conscious decision to do whatever it is, okay? So let's see. I'm not going to worry about that. So, okay, so this is the notion of psyching yourself up, right? So if I'm going to psych myself up, this kind of falls into this, right? You've seen athletes that will, I've seen UFC fighters, they'll stand there after they get, checked, their gloves are checked and their mouthpiece and all that kind of stuff. They don't have Vaseline all over their bodies. After they get all checked, then they'll and they go in there to fight, right? And you look at that, if you're not a fight fan, and you're like, this dude's crazy. Well, they're psyching themselves up, right? They're stimulating all of their nerve endings, right? Their tactile senses, right? They're prepping their body to go in there and get hit. They're also creating, remember we talked about that gate theory of pain, right? Where they're also creating a sense of pain in themselves so that they don't feel pain, if that makes sense. That's why they hit themselves everywhere. They don't just usually hit themselves in the face. Sometimes they do. They're also getting that adrenaline flowing. They're creating this stimulus on themselves. which then creates a physiological response. So they hit themselves, right? So there's your stimulus. Then they're experiencing a physiological response, right? That's that rush of adrenaline, that rush of dopamine. Then they get, excuse me, then they get a physiological response to that, right? That numbing sense, and then they're ready to go battle, right? So this is the first theory. Now the second theory you'll notice is pretty much the same thing, but the order is different. So first they perceive a stimulus. That has to happen first, right? Can't have a reaction to something we're not aware exists. So first we have to perceive it, but then all those other things happen simultaneously. So it triggers a subjective feeling and a physical response. So no one thing is dependent on the previous one, right? Feelings and physiological reactions work together. So it's the same thing. They're not saying that no, something different happens. They agree that these four things happens. But you see the stimulus and then all three of these happen together at the exact same time. All right, so that's the Cannon-Bard theory. Now we move on to the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory. Again, first you have to perceive the stimulus. That's kind of universal. Now, that interpretation of sensory information is now divided to the specific stimulus and the context of the stimulus. So let's say, going back to this one, let's say I look up and I see a bear standing in the doorway, right? According to this theory, I would see the bear, then my heart would start racing, right? Then my brain is going to go, why is my heart racing? And then I'm going to go, oh, because there's a freaking bear right there, okay? That's the order of operations there. Cannon-Bard, look up, I see the bear. At the same time, holy crap, a bear, my heart is racing, all that stuff, and it's all happening at the same time. In this theory, the Schachter-Singer two-factor theory, I look up and see the bear. Okay, I have to do that first. Now I'm going to put it into some sort of context. Okay, where is the bear? If the bear is in the room that I am in, that is one arousal, right? That is one sort of thing I'm going to act on. If I look up and see a bear, but it's a different context, I look up and see a bear, but guess what? I'm at the zoo and he's behind protective glass. I'm not going to have an automatic arousal to that, right? I know that I'm safe. I know I don't need to flee. I can just enjoy what a bear looks like, right? Going back to, keeping all the, I guess, analogies the same, right? I look up and I see a bear, but the bear is outside and I see him through sliding glass door. That's a pretty sturdy sliding glass door, and he's not banging on it or anything. I'm not going to have the same level of arousal as I would if I look up and he's standing in front of an open sliding glass door. So according to this theory, I'm going to take whatever that stimulus is and I'm going to apply a context to it. Dangerous or not dangerous, threatening or not threatening. I look up and I see a pit bull, that's potentially threatening, right? I look up and I see a poodle. In both cases, I see a stimulus, I see a dog, right? But there's sort of the specific stimulus that I'm seeing very different, right? I'm not so much afraid of a poodle as much as I maybe would be a pit bull. So the specific stimulus is sort of weighed, and the context of the stimulus. I actually had a pit bull one time that jumped into my squad car, and I got the hell out. We were out on a call. I don't remember what it was. Both of us had our doors open. We were both out of the car for one reason. And somehow a wandering pit bull from the neighborhood came and jumped into the passenger side of my car and sat down. And that makes sense because it's air conditioned and cool. It's hot outside. And I guess somehow he knew that. I don't know. And he was panting and wagging his tail. And it was hilarious to me and my partner at the time. That I only had a partner for that one day. She takes her taser out and she's walking over to the car to tase the dog. I had to basically knock it out of her hand. I'm like, no. Read the dog, man. The dog is wagging his tail. He's happy as can be. Hey, he probably won't be when we try to get him out of the car, but you're not going to tase a dog. So you have to look at the context of the stimulus. So after that occurs, then we experience a general autonomic arousal and particular emotion. In my case, in that situation, it was funny, and her reaction was fear, right? Because Pipple's a Pipple, right? I can look past that and go, yeah, but it's wagging its tail and it's panting and it seems happy, right? So let's let him soak up some AC for a few minutes and then let's see if we can coax him out of the car. And then a feedback loop occurs, right? So we see the stimulus, we interpret the context of that stimulus and the environment with which we see the stimulus in. We experience some sort of feeling, and then we sort of run through this again, right? Do we, need to reevaluate? And the last one is the Lazarus theory of emotion. I like this one. The theory that cognitive appraisal is the first step in an emotional response and that all other aspects of emotion, including physiological arousal, depend on it. Critics argue that some emotional reactions are instantaneous that occur too rapidly for cognitive appraisal, and Lazarus argues that some mental processes occur without any conscious awareness. So this is kind of a spontaneous, like it happens spontaneously. Like right now, you can't really differentiate it. All right, so those theories of emotions, just kind of know, the James Long has the 4 things that have to happen in that order, that the Canon Bard first is a stimulus and then everything else happens simultaneously, and then the Schachter Singer breaks down the stimulus, and that Lazarus says, no, it happens too quickly. You can't break this down and think about it, it happens instantaneously. So slight differences there. All right, question about emotions. How many basic emotions do you think that we have? If we boil down your emotion, whatever your emotion is, to the most basic form of that emotion, and you couldn't get any simpler, how many emotions would we have? And usually people throw out all kinds of numbers here, and pretty much this is the universally considered emotions. We have sad, happy, surprise, disgust, anger, and fear. And there are other things that work into there, like you could figure in other emotions, and it's usually a combination of these. So like jealousy. Jealousy would be a combination of fear, right? If I'm jealous that my girl is talking to some dude, right? And so I feel the emotion of jealousy. That is a very distinct emotion, right? We'll boil that down. Why do I feel jealous? Well, probably because I'm angry that this guy is talking to my girl, and I may be fearful that she is going to reciprocate an interest in him. So jealousy is really anger plus fear added together. And you can do that with just about any other emotion, right? Whatever emotion that you think of, you can probably look, and it's a combination of these. But these can't really be boiled down any, diluted any more than what they currently are. So we have 6 basic emotions. All right. So that is this chapter. Just about done with that. Sorry, I know this is a boring chapter, and I'm feeling tired right now. So I'm sure that came across as not my best lecture, but at least we're done with it. All right. How do I turn this off? Control, Command, Escape. Control, Command. See you for the next one.